Yes, what do we got tonight? Oh, let me ask you, how long do you tend to do quick cuts? I apologize.
So Quick Cuts is just Quick Cuts is a show that I do. It's a series. I take three friends, three topics, and we talk about 10,
Whatever.
15 minutes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And this is a quick cut, right? Or do you want to do?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
This is just a quick cut segment.
Don't ramble on, Dave.
when it's nap time, I'll let you know.
Fantastic.
This podcast is a member of the Red 5 Network. For more Red 5 Network podcasts and content creators, visit bio.link/Red5.
Okay, folks, welcome to another edition of Quick Cuts here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. Quick Cuts, as you can remember. If I can't remember, then you probably can't remember. What am I trying to say? Quick Cuts. It's a series, a show here that we take three topics and three friends and really discuss them. Not a full, complete show, but a little tit for tat, as they say. And tonight, on our first segment, we got Dave from What Does Star Wars Mean to You? Dave, brother, what's happening, man?
Not too much. Thank you for having me on. It's been a crazy day of real life work, and so I'm really excited to just talk some Star Wars.
Yeah, well, I asked you if we can kind of impromptu do it tonight, so thanks for flexing. And last minute recording session, but this will be fun.
Yes. Anytime it's fun.
So I've been hearing on the news, on the Twitters, on the XYZs, LMNOPs, whatever they're calling it these days, that Kathleen Kenedy gets fired again.
No.
And
hold on.
Again, yes.
Let me get my Kathleen gets fired shirt.
Hey, there's an idea.
I know. I have to wash it.
T-Public, here I come. But no, so there's we were reading through some news tidbits on the Star Wars in the Star Wars universe. Jon Favreau is leaving Marvel, and he's hopping over to save Star Wars. Was it
Kevin Feige? You said Jon Favreau.
What did I say?
You said Jon Favreau.
I did say Jon Favreau. Wishful thinking, maybe?
I thought, oh my God, this is a completely different topic. Jon Favreau is leaving Star Wars? What are they going to do?
No, you were absolutely right.
Yeah,
absolutely right. Well, somebody's got to save Star Wars. Might as well be him.
Yeah, right.
But these are I guess these news topics kind of are cyclical.
Yes.
We hear them every 3 months, I think. Either Kathleen Kennedy's getting fired, or Kevin Feige is doing a Star Wars. He's not doing a Star Wars. He's coming over to Star Wars. He's leaving Star Wars. So it's funny to see, some of the internet publications, official and non-official, kind of, ride that wave back and forth, to and fro, up and down. It's weird.
Yeah, I'm very cynical about these kind of stories. I think it's the nature of the clickbait. It's like, hey, we got nothing right now. Let's throw up the Kathleen Kennedy's getting fired.
Yeah, that's too funny. Look, at one point, she probably will leave Lucasfilm, and then everybody's going to say, see, I told you.
Exactly. Remember in 2017 when I tweeted that she was going to be fired? Well, here it is, 2025, and she has been.
She's gone. But it's kind of funny. But what do you think, really, in general? I mean, I know we're kind of making fun of the news, this news tidbit here. But what do you think of Kevin Feige coming over to Star Wars? I know, we are nerds of many flavors. We love the MCU for the most part, but I feel like like he's done a good job with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think there's a lot of planning after I don't know how many, 70,412 movies that exist in the MCU. But I mean, that takes a lot of planning. That takes a lot of legwork and spreadsheets action there. So
a lot of note cards on the board.
Absolutely. But what do you think of, I guess, in theory, as a concept, what do you think of Kevin Feige coming over to kind of run things when Kathleen Kenedy is gone? I mean, she's going to be gone eventually. What if it's him?
Well, yeah. Let's just pretend that she leaves of her own accord, and that it's not one of those like kind of BS PR releases of like she just wanted to spend more time with her family.
Yeah.
But say she does exit, and then Kevin comes in. I think I would be kind of hesitantly very excited about it. I know those are kind of two very different concepts to hold at the same time, but I do like what his creative approach to the MCU has been, which is, I think, probably a very loosely controlled story arc. I think they got very lucky with that Thanos story arc, in a sense, because it was a very powerful, simple aspect of like, this dude needs 5 rings and he wants it's 5 rings and he wants to destroy the world. I don't know. Nobody can see me right now, but I did count my fingers and remember that it's the glove. And I think there's one at the center at the back. So maybe 6, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So, but that was a very kind of easy get for a complex history within comic books for a movie-going public. I would also say that if you look at what they're doing with Kang the Conqueror, I feel very confused about everything. And like, is he the big bad, or are they trying to do something different? Every time in this, I don't know what phase we are, 5, 6, 7, whatever phase we're in.
Right.
I'm kind of confused at like, where are we leading up to? Whereas in the Thanos storyline, even as far back as Avengers 2 or Captain America Winter Soldier, you felt the thread of the overall storyline. And and just like they're doing with the TV show, the Star Wars TV shows, I kind of am excited about having that in the future, having that within the Star Wars theatrical releases a little bit. Let me ask you this, because I just thought of this. If, say, he comes aboard and he says, no more trilogies, it's just going to be straight up storyline. How do you think it needs to be trilogies, or if it were like 8 or 9 movies that are just a straight telling?
That's a great question. I think I feel that the trilogies, I don't know, with the announcement of the fact that they were going to do the Rey movies, I'm not, I'm not too like eager to see a Rey trilogy. Nothing against, Daisy Ridley. She's wonderful. Yeah. And Rey, I like the character. I think, I don't know. The standalone movies are great. Although, obviously Rogue One for me is chef's kiss.
Yes.
Solo was fun on the big screen. It had its problems, but I think now, who was it? The CEO that came back from to Disney to kind of clean house.
What's his name? Iger.
Yeah, he basically said that they are cutting down on quantity and focusing on quality, which I think is a good move, because I think, from a standpoint of a company that it was, I feel, too eager to fill their streaming service with as much as they could to attract, subscribers, I think they kind of shot themselves in the foot by, I don't know, maybe rushing too much
Yeah.
through the process, through the creative process, creating programs that weren't really up to par, especially when it comes to the Star Wars brand. I know a lot of people that have really fallen off the Star Wars wagon and left the fandom for
Mhm.
whatever reason. And so to me, I think, they really should kind of take a pause and say, let's really focus on a quality story and see where it goes. If it leads to a trilogy, fine. If it doesn't and it's a standalone, that's fine too. I've said it before. I really miss Star Wars on the big screen.
Yeah.
So whatever incarnation they choose, I really hope that it's good.
Now, I feel as though there's a lot of Kathleen Kennedy hate, and in part, I kind of, having worked in the industry. I mean, I've worked in television, and I worked for Disney. The It's really hard for me to put the blame on any one person because it is such a collaborative kind of thing, and there's also, not is it just collaborative, but what you mentioned about wanting to put too much out there. There are those goals of like, look, we need 3 Star Wars shows this year. What do you got? And they have to air this, and this. Even J.J. Abrams, in making, I think, The Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, was like, can I get a couple more months? And the studio head was, no, you can't. You have to put it out on Christmas 2019. And so there's a lot of, not only is there collaboration, there is also compromise. And I think
Sure.
that's what we're seeing. Obi-Wan, I think, is a great example, which I enjoyed the show. But it does feel like it was a 2-hour movie where they were like, let's expand it out into 6 or 8 episodes that are about 40
Sure.
minutes.
Right.
So when you have all that kind of colliding together, I think it's very difficult to hold any one person accountable. Yes, it all is under Kathleen Kennedy's watch, but there are so many other aspects that are hard to control. Um, and so I think, in some ways, here's the thing. I think Kathleen Kennedy's probably an amazing producer. But a producer is someone who says, hey, creative, what do you need? I'm going to give that to you so that you can make your
Sure.
vision happen. She worked for Spielberg for years, Lucas for years. And I think maybe what Star Wars needs is maybe a little more of a creative producer who, maybe in the Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, Kevin Feige, from his past successes, to kind of really hold those reins and not be like, hey, creative, what do you need? But hey, here's kind of the creative points you guys need to hit. I don't really care how you hit them, but this is where you need to land. And let's talk about how to make that happen. And that's also a lot of guesswork on my part.
Sure. Yeah. And, we have to understand too that movie making is a business.
Yep.
You mentioned the rush to get The Force Awakens out into theaters, hell or high water on that date. The company had just spent, $4.2
Yeah.
billion with a B. And I'm sure the investors are like, oh, okay, where's our return? We just
Yeah.
wrote a really large check. Let's get to it. And I think for the most part they made their money, of course, because Star Wars is at that point was a brand that for the most part was kind of unmatched, unchallenged.
Yeah.
It's gone through some phases, obviously, since the sale to Disney, and not all for the better. But I think, I don't know. It almost feels like we are at a precipice where maybe Disney is kind of listening or watching
Hmm.
the fans to see what is really going on. I think one or two vocal Twitter accounts might be a fluke, but when people start you know talking more and more about how the quality has left Star Wars as a brand, and people are not. Not anticipating
Yeah.
these Star Wars events on the small screen as much as they should be, then as a company, I think they have to step back and say, well, what the hell's going on? Why are we not commanding the numbers that we should be commanding, and how can we fix that? And I think um, that really lies on Kathleen Kennedy as a leader,
Hmm.
and yes, as a producer, obviously. She did something that George saw in order for her to become the president of Lucasfilm when they did the sale. So
Yeah.
we're not going to take anything away from her, obviously. But yeah, I mean, as a leader, I think I don't know. A lot of people say that she might be a little disconnected from either the fandom or the public, the consumer of these films, which may or may not be the case. Obviously, we're not in the boardroom when
Yeah.
these CEOs are talking. But it is interesting that I don't know. Iger's announcement really. Um, I don't know, not threw me for a loop, but it surprised me to hear them say that they're concentrating on quality versus quantity. And it took several years, I guess, for them to kind of pony up and admit that, and I think that's great.
Yeah, and here's the cynical side, because I can be very cynical,
Yes,
but focusing on quality, not quantity, is also code to Wall Street. We're going to save money and not spend so much. So don't worry, our payback's going to be better.
sure, yeah,
Um,
yeah, I
but
think so
I
too. Yeah,
I think I do think it does need kind of a visionary element. I think Dave Filoni has
sure.
been great in the television aspect. I don't know how he if that will translate to movie planning, but it does need a little bit of like, here's the big picture and how do we make that work.
Yes. And I did also want to point out one thing. Again, I'm not one of those. Well, both of us we're not those YouTubers that are, crying, MCU, or there's too many women in Star Wars or Marvel, all that
No, yeah.
stuff. But I do feel like there was kind of a shift, to be able to draw in a certain aspect of the audience that may not be used to going to a Star War. Obviously,
Yeah.
Star Wars seems
Yeah.
to be a little bit more on the high adventure, big testosterone numbers, battles, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. um, and Star Wars, I think, when it came to the small screen, started to soften up a little bit, in my opinion, with getting all cutesy with Grogu and touchy feely with the Book of Boba Fett, and it's like, I don't think that's what the core audience, or the core fans were really into, and it shows because the numbers, obviously, you ask anybody out in the street that is a Star Wars fan, Book of Boba Fett is probably at the bottom of all of the television series. So yeah, I'm, again, not saying that there's no, there shouldn't be any women in Star Wars, because obviously that's a ridiculous notion. But I think, when it comes to these stories, just make them good, make them adventurous, and maybe stick to George's core message of believing in yourself, and that hero's journey that we all
Hmm.
go through, no matter if we have a penis or not.
um yeah, I that's also another T Public, let's make a t-shirt. um Star Wars for people without penises. um but I agree with that sentiment that that it doesn't maybe need to go back to basics. I think what it is it's not about, oh, how do I phrase this? This is going to be difficult for me. It's not about it's not about trying to reinvent Star Wars so much as making something that's so much fun that everyone will want to watch. And yes, that includes inclusion, but it doesn't maybe have to be I don't even want to say it. Don't even want to put that out there.
Yeah, it's it's difficult. Yeah,
it is difficult, and I think it's a difficult kind of conversation to have without putting your foot in your mouth. And I'm speaking as a white man who's 50 years old.
Yeah.
So
you don't look a day over 48 and a half.
You know what? A lot of people tell me that, and thank you. I appreciate that, Ro.
Yeah.
Yeah. The AARP doesn't think so, but
Oh man, you got to get your tote bag.
Yeah. I have lots of things to tote. Where am I going to put my Star Wars figures? In my AARP tote bag. You know what? Third t-shirt of the night.
Oh yeah. Any final thoughts on this quick cuts topics? I know, well, it's interesting.
It would be neat to see Kevin Feige take over Star Wars and see if he can recreate what he did with the MCU Phase 1 through, I want to say Phase 5, whatever ended in 2019. I do think he himself would need to go back to basics, because I think they took off more than they could chew for this second part, that the post Thanos storyline. And I think if he went back to basics, they went kind of back to basics with Star Wars, it could be really something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so too. Well, you also hear it on the internet, Star Wars is dead, but I think Star Wars is anything but dead.
No.
We'll hopefully get more stories, more variety, and it should be interesting.
Yeah, and I apologize. I have one more thing to say about Star Wars is Dead. You had mentioned cyclical with the stories about Kathleen Kenedy. I think popularity is cyclical too. I think it rises and falls, and we're just in a fall at the moment. And I think Marvel's a little bit at a fall from the apex of the Thanos storyline, and just like from the apex of The Force Awakens, quite frankly. That we're just in a downward slope. And you know what? Just like the Disney stock shot up today, I think Star Wars stock will shoot up again in a year or two.
I just realized that Kathleen Kenedy has a twin. So when she leaves, maybe her twin will come in and pose as Kathleen Kenedy. She'll never get fired.
No, there will always be a Kathleen Kenedy. I think, you know what? Quite frankly, since The Phantom Menace, I think there are people who just want to hate on Star Wars. I was one of them back in 2001, 1999. Now I kind of really like those movies. So I don't know what that says.
I don't know, but we probably should just make it into a t-shirt too as well.
Yes. Go for the Forced t-shirts 15-minute show.
Excellent. All right, Dave, thank you very much again for coming on this edition of Quick Cuts, this segment. Where can folks find you to say hello there?
General Kenobi. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Star Wars Mean to You. That's Star Wars Mean, the number 2 and the letter U. And you can find the show What Does Star Wars Mean to You wherever you cast your pod, Amazon, Apple, Spotify. We just had the Ralph Report's Eddie Pence on, and it's a great conversation.
Excellent. So, folks, get on that. Get on top of it. Make sure you are subscribed and follow my friend Dave. Until next time, thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. You got to come back more often and regale us with your lively retorts. Love it.
Thank you so much, Ro. It's a pleasure. I love it. And yes, I'm going to be back.
Excellent. All right, folks, that was segment 1 of our Quick Cut show. We'll be right back talking with some more friends and more topics here on the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. Don't forget to tell a friend if you're enjoying the show. If you enjoy this Quick Cut series, tell a friend. We'll be right back. Hey friends, just a quick reminder, if you enjoy our content and don't want to commit to a Patreon tier, you can show your love in other ways.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, you can take advantage of our merchandise store at TeePublic, where we've got cool designs from all across the Red 5 network. Look for sale announcements and save up to 30 to 35% on all our merchandise.
Oh, nice.
And there's also a very convenient way to help support the channel. As you know, coffee is our friend. It keeps us going. You can show your appreciation by heading over to buymeacoffee.com/Scarif. Buymeacoffee.com/Scarif. Any amount starting at $5, a one-time treat for us to help with all the stuff it takes to maintain the quality you deserve. And remember, it's always sunny on Scarif, and that's the Scuttlebutt. And pass the cream, please.
This is Sentry Mode.
All right, folks, you know what that means. You heard that jingle. It's time for Sentry Mode. And on this segment of Sentry Mode, we have a friend come on board, and I'm going to ask him a couple of questions, 5 questions for Sentry Mode. We'll see how he does. Please welcome Daniel Sparks. Daniel, what's up, man?
Hey, glad to be here, man. I'm glad to be invited to this. This will be fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So obviously, we're recording this on StreamYard. The audience right now is not seeing your background. You have quite an array of Star Wars action figures and other wonderful memorabilia back there. Can you tell me, I'm going to ask you one question that is not part of Sentry Mode, but what is your most favorite or prized possession?
Oh dear. It would probably be something that's not on camera. And it was actually my original 12 that I had when I was a kid, when I was growing up, that I got when I was 5, when the movie came out.
Sure.
I do. And thank God my mom wasn't one of those moms that went up in the attic and threw away all my toys.
God. Yeah.
And I have every single one of my Star Wars toys from since I was 5. And I would kind of throw those all in together. I guess when you start getting into collecting, and I'm sure you guys could do this on another podcast or whatever, is that what I try to do with my collecting is that it's like what I make, the dioramas that I make, and not so much the figures, but kind of like I put more of my focus into that, as opposed to being a completist like I was years and years ago, back when Power of the Force 2 came out, and I just went kind of nuts with it.
Yeah. Too funny. Yeah. Those, that's wonderful that your mother didn't throw stuff out. I hope you call her at least every Sunday.
I text my mother every morning.
Excellent. Awesome. All right, cool. Sentry Mode. Let's poke around different aspects of a little Star Wars, a little maybe not Star Wars, but let's see what we got. You ready?
Or I'm about as ready as I'm going to ever be, I guess.
Yes. Excellent. All right, question number 1. While exploring Cloud City, 3PO bumps into a rather rude droid. What does this rude droid say to 3PO?
Ichuta.
There you go. Very rude. That's awesome. All right. Let's jump around here and all right, since you are a collector, here's a good one for you. All right. Kenner famously had the Star Wars action figure lines back in the day, figures, ships, etc. What popular line, I guess it's debatable whether it was popular or not, but what popular line did they develop that they claimed were ships and vehicles that were just right off of camera view? What was that line called?
The mini rigs?
Yes, absolutely. The
Okay,
mini
yeah.
rigs. Yeah, little ships that you can, shove one action figure in and play as if they were, on Hoth or on Endor, but just off to the side. George decided not to shoot that angle. So
Right.
those toys were like I said, some people like them, some people don't. They're canon, not canon, whatever the argument of the day is. But that's too funny. Do you have any of those mini rigs?
I actually have 3. I have the INT. I forgot the name of it right offhand. I've got the box over there. It's the one that was supposed to fit inside the AT-AT. And it had little wings that popped out on the side. And then I also have the mini sail barge mini rig that basically it looks like the katana, but it only fits one figure, and it has little wings on the side also. And then I have pieces of the power generator mini rig that they came out with.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Absolutely. Wonderful. It's a nice little chapter in the collecting history of us Star Wars fans. Too funny.
Oh yeah.
All right, question number 3. If AT-AT stands for All-Terrain Armored Transport, what does ATST stand for?
All-terrain scout transport.
Absolutely correct. You are getting them right off the bat. No hesitation, my friend. You can tell you're a fan. Or a nerd. I think
it's more along the lines of a nerd. If you could see the rest of this room,
yeah, it goes hand in hand. You can tell by my background as well. So excellent. All right, question number 3. Speaking of acronyms, for a while after The Force Awakens, fans had a rumor for what Snoke stood for. Do you remember what that was? We were all speculating. We were
speculation
like,
on what SNOKE.
Who is Snoke? Was it this guy? Was it that guy? How does it all play together? What is the end game? Snoke. Who was Snoke? Or at least who did fans think Snoke was and made up this acronym that fit perfectly, actually?
Oh, I remember this. I just can't. I can't remember. There were so many rumors going around about who Snoke was at that point in time.
You ain't kidding.
I mean, but I didn't. I guess I missed that one. But I have to think SNOKE. I mean, he's sitting right here. I'm sitting here staring at. I'm going to stare at him, and until I
see if it comes to you.
Well, at one point, a lot of people thought he was a reincarnation of Darth Bane, and I remember hearing that one for a long time. But then. But now I think you're going to catch me on this one. The acronym for Snoke is going to get me.
All right, Snoke. We were talking about it back in the day when The Force Awakens came out. People were speculating it was a Sith no one knew existed.
I'm sitting here pulling out Darth Bane out of my ass. And okay.
There you go. Yep. Okay, here, question number 5 on Sentry Mode, and extra points for the second portion of this question. And let's see how deep your nerd card goes.
Okay.
What is Finn's Stormtrooper number, and does it mean anything, or is it a reference to anything?
FN 2187, and the reference 2187. I'm just thinking about back, Phantom Menace, and you had 1138 in the back of a battle droid. 2187. 218.
I can see the wheels turning.
Yeah, they are definitely turning. There was FN 2187. The 218.
I'll give you a hint.
That one's got me because I'm thinking like dates. I'm thinking dates.
No.
Okay.
No. I'll give you a line that Han Solo says in Star Wars. Let's find out what cell this princess of yours is in. Here it is.
Oh, okay. That was cell block A23, and then I guess is the 2187 had to have been the actual cell itself.
The cell block, yeah, where
block.
Princess Leia was being held on the Death Star. Actually, perfect. Excellent. Daniel, thank you so much. That was 5 questions on this edition of Sentry Mode. Did you have fun?
I had a good time. That was good. Those were digging deep. I was actually going even deeper. I don't know how. I was actually expecting you to kind of throw me a question like, "What is Lando's real name?" And I was like, "Well, it's Ladorius Balthazar Calrissian." And I was like, "Why do I know that?"
Yeah, it's funny. It's little trivia bits that stay in our nerd brain for whatever reason. And for some reason, I remember reading an old Starlog magazine right before Return of the Jedi came out, and they told me that it took 100,000 pounds of nails to build Jabba's sail barge out in Yuma, Arizona. So,
just to blow it up.
Yeah, that is again, that is one of those tidbits of information that for some reason just sticks in my brain. Too funny.
Yep. It's good stuff.
Excellent. Why don't you tell folks that are listening where to find you and say hello there?
Well, basically, you can find me on Twitter, X. I really haven't done. This is kind of like my, I guess, popping the old podcast cherry type of thing. So this is going to be my first, kind of venture into this. I feel kind of old by saying that this is my first venture into a podcast and being recorded or whatever. I mean, so if I'm basically just on the X.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, you are welcome to come by the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast anytime. If you want to think of a topic, we can team up and, do a show. So absolutely. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, thanks a lot. I appreciate the invite.
No problem. All right, folks, let's get back to the discussion. That was Sentry Mode with Daniel Sparks. Check it out. All right, folks, I wanted to take a little break and say thank you to all the patrons here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. You all remind me to make sure that we spit out some good product here from topics to technical. We want to make sure that you are proud of us enough to attach your name to this show. First of all, our executor tier, Scott and Kim of the Use and Abuse Podcast, a proud member of the Red 5 family. And make sure to check them out. Visit them in the chat when they go live for fun and shenanigans. And speaking of shenanigans, another wonderful supporter, Nicholas Schaefer, Mr. Backyard TARDIS himself. Hey, he's got a channel, Adventures in Locksmithing, and if you think rekeying is all he does, well, you should watch a few of his videos and prepare yourself for the crazies. All right, and moving on to our Garrison tier, big thanks to the Frank, our resident Back to the Future expert. Log in and say hello. What's up, Frank? Melanie Marquita, big high five to you, my friend, one of my favorite collaborators. We got Comics and Cosmetics. Danny, her YouTube channel's got the latest nerd news and some awesome tips on comics and cosmetics. Go give her a sub. All right, big shout outs to Alex, the salty nerd himself, Nicole, peace, love, and all fandoms. And someone who brings joy to my timeline, Belinda. So glad you're on this list. I also want to give a special shout out to Vader, Rapina, and Rennie. And of course, Ollie and family. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you, patrons and friends of the podcast. If you're interested in helping to keep the lights on here, get some exclusive Scarif swag, stickers, and my periodic Row Rant episodes, head on over to patreon.com/Scarif Scuttlebutt. Remember, we can't have the scuttle without the butt. Okay, folks, we are back, and we are in the middle of doing a Quick Cuts episode with some friends, and we got some news and some topics that we'll chime in here with Ambrose from the GNN. What's up, Ambrose?
Long time no see. Doing well. Everything's doing well now.
Excellent. So this is our second segment here on this complete episode of the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. And we're just talking a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff to talk about as of tonight, November 21st, 2023. There's some stuff that a lot of people have been talking about, but we do have a main topic, and I want to give you guys the heads up. Our main topic, we have been trying to schedule this little recording for probably the better part of a week and a half, and we're going to talk about what our thoughts are on who's doing better on the small screen, the MCU or Star Wars? But before we get into that, speaking of Star Wars, today, as I mentioned, a lot of folks are talking about the announcement that was just made, I guess, an article in Variety magazine. Dave Filoni made the creative head over at Lucasfilm, and we're going to just talk a little bit about that and distill what some of what any of that means. Because I know, wasn't he already like a creative executive back in April, and he had already taken kind of a soft role at Lucasfilm. Do you remember all that?
I remember that. And I'm pretty sure this is a creative position, and it's Disney trying to just let the fans know that he's the heir apparent. If and when Kathleen Kenedy decides to step aside, I think Disney is putting him in the line of succession,
right?
And they're trying to kill any debate, as tends to happen whenever Disney does anything with leadership. There's always debate, so I think they're just trying to nip it in the bud and make it clear that he's the guy. Whenever she decides to step aside, he's filling that role.
Yeah, and the article did mention that the two would be working hand in hand together, more or less. Having Dave Filoni kind of be in charge of some of the creative narratives going forward from television shows to films. So that's kind of exciting. Kind of I've seen a lot of people post that they are cautiously optimistic. Obviously, there's the fans that say hail to Dave Filoni. There's the other fans that are a little more skeptical. As we know, you're not going to please Star Wars fans 100% of the time.
It's the old joke. What's the best way to piss off a Star Wars fan? Just talk about Star Wars. You'll be lucky if you get 45% of the fans to be happy.
Wow, 45. That's quite a number.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and again, I'm not that kind of guy that is super cynical. But I am cautiously optimistic. I think, having known Dave Filoni's I guess creative powers in the past between Rebels and Clone Wars more specifically. But for me, Ahsoka left me a little a little bbit wanting more. I didn't, you can hear our review. Brad and I talked a little, the whole episode really, a couple of weeks ago when the Ahsoka show finished. But as a Star Wars fan, I'm always happy to learn that there's going to be new Star Wars, and I'll watch it, I'll critique it, I'll absorb it, and then that's all we can do really. If you like it. If not, tell us why.
I mean, I do have a theory, and I don't know if I'm right as to why this news is being announced, because Disney very rarely does this. They very rarely will say, hey, this is the guy. And I really think that South Park did a number on them.
Oh, okay.
And I think they're trying to deflect a little bit. We all know the South Park. I'm not going to quote it. I don't want to get flagged on YouTube. But I think what happened was the criticism going towards Kathleen Kennedy's way, it was easy to dismiss because a lot of it was coming from what they would call crackpot YouTubers. But when South Park made those criticisms, it kind of shot it into the mainstream.
Right.
And now I think they're trying to they're just trying to soften the blow, because I'm sure behind the scenes she's just getting dogpiled. And I think the episode, some of it was on point, some of it made sense, but I don't think it was entirely fair to her, because they were blaming her for things that Kevin Feige and Bob Iger decided on.
Sure.
And she kind of, I mean, I feel like the episode, it made its point, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff she did that was bad decisions, but they really put a lot on her that she wasn't, like, she's not responsible for the Snow White remake. She's not responsible for what goes on at Marvel. So they really kind of misled the casual viewer into thinking that she actually makes all these decisions, which I kind of, playing devil's advocate, don't think was too fair for her.
Right. Yeah. She, I think at this point, she's just kind of an easy target for a lot of folks. But hey, can't wait to have her as my co-host here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. I sent her a shirt, and she has been modeling it last couple of weeks, so that's fantastic.
I saw that on Twitter. She's very proud of it. I'm glad she took your offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So fun stuff, great things to talk about in the geekosphere. But let's get down to the main topic. We wanted to talk a little bit about the success rate of of all these wonderful cinematic experiences that have come down to the small screen, down to the television streaming services. And I wanted to get your take, because you seem to have been interested in my original post there on Twitter. And I'll just ask you what your thoughts are on which franchise between the MCU and Star Wars is doing a better job on the small screen. What do you think?
I think the MCU is doing a terrible job, but it gets received better for whatever reason. And Star Wars is doing an exponentially much better job than them, but the fans are hard to please, and it's not getting the credit that it deserves. So it's kind of a complicated, it's a very interesting question, and one that I'm excited to talk about, because you have one entity in the MCU where the fans have made it clear about what they want, and they're pretty much just telling the fans to shove it, and with each show afterwards, they're just doubling down on it. Okay. We didn't want She-Hulk. Well, if you didn't want She-Hulk, you're not going to like Echo. And guess what we're putting out? Echo. We don't want Echo. Oh, well, if you're not going to like Echo, look at what we're doing with the new Avengers. And the thing that's going to happen with Marvel, and it's happened with Marvel already, as you can see, because for all intents and purposes, everyone I know that has watched the Marvels in the theater has enjoyed the show, has enjoyed the movie. I haven't watched it. I'm broke, so I can't go to the movies right now. It's apathy, and Star Wars fans are still hate watching, and hoping for things to turn around. So Star Wars has that going for them. Marvel fans have given up. They're not watching. They don't care. They're not reading the books. They're not watching because Kevin Feige has done what Kevin Feige wants to do. He hasn't listened to anybody. Ever since he ousted Ike Perlmutter way back in Phase 3, he's let the inmates run the asylum production-wise because he doesn't have a spine. And you end up with, writers that alienate the core audience. And it's not a matter, and I'm not going to get into the whole, like, a lot of what the YouTubers say, like MCU and all that. I think a lot of that is overblown. But there is a little bit to it because whether you like it or not, your core demographic is men. And when you put these things out, you say, we're not making it for men anymore. Well, the women aren't going to see it. And you're really at this point, you're making a product for nobody. And I'll cite an example. They're saying things like Captain Marvel. Well, the men didn't show up to watch, so of course the box office failed. Okay, but where were the women? Half the country's women. How come they didn't show up to watch it? You made it for them.
It's almost like Bill Barr's joke regarding the WNBA.
Yeah. And I'm of the opinion, and I'm with him on that. I heard that, and I think he's dead on. It's not my job to watch something just because you made it, and you explicitly told me that it's not for me anyway. So why am I going to give you my money? And that's the thing. Like I said, I think a lot of it with YouTubers gets overblown, and then a lot of misogynistic comments come out and all that. And that's not what I'm about. I'm just about the fans are not getting what they want.
Yeah, and that's interesting. I think let's go back to the beginning of what your comment was. I think for me, and I guess this question, it seems a little focused, but it really is kind of open-ended depending on your metrics. And obviously this is a very subjective, question where a lot can happen depending on what it is, I guess, that you are enjoying at the moment. I think, for me, I've watched all of the MCU shows from the WandaVision show to the, Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all the way through to Loki. And for me, when I measure, I guess, the success rate, and not really the success rate, but, when back in the 90s, when George Lucas was trying to get Star Wars off the ground when it comes to smaller projects, he wanted to be able to create Star Wars the way he was used to, but not spend as much money. So to me, that means, a project that looks like it's supposed to be up on the big screen, and not, obviously it costing not as much as these big blockbuster movies. He was doing the experimentation with the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles with the technology, and that's that's fine. I'm into the technologies. Anybody that knows me knows. But I feel like the visuals in the Marvel shows have been a hell of a lot more movie-like than Star Wars on the big screen.
Well,
and real fast, I'll say this, and I understand the limitations of the technology, going forward within Star Wars. But if you put, and I know people don't like when people, when other folks, compare Star Wars shows, but I think in our discussion, I think it's inevitable. You've got a show like Andor that was not shot in the volume, that looks like they went out on location, which they did, and shot everything, the traditional way, versus something like, the Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi even, that was shot in the volume. It looks like they were just in a warehouse, and the limitations are very apparent. I think for me, that is one aspect of why I feel the MCU is doing better on the small screen than Star Wars. You were going to say something?
Yeah, because the presentation-wise, Yeah, the MCU is doing better than Star Wars, but that's because Kathleen Kenedy, for all the vitriol that is thrown her way, knows how to work a budget, and she knows that streaming's a different game, and it's harder to pull in money on a television show. You know how much money She-Hulk costs per episode?
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, $25 million an episode.
Yeah.
How does that business model sustain itself?
Right.
You know, and the show, and that was like on the lower end of the visually, that show is atrocious compared to the other shows they've done. So, I mean, you know, she looked like a PlayStation 2 character. I don't even know where the money went on that. And it was $25 million an episode. So the higher quality shows than that, it's got to be more than $25 million an episode if that's what She-Hulk cost. And that's just a money pit. Now, you look at Star Wars, and yeah, the production value is a little bit low. In my opinion, the storytelling is a little bit better. The only Star Wars show I can really say that I absolutely did not like was Book of Boba Fett. I think it was just a terrible interpretation of the character, and that is the only show where I can come out flat and say that it sucked. Kenobi was boring at times, but I liked the story. I think the problem with Kenobi was that they marketed it wrong. If they had marketed the show for what it was, I think it would have gotten a much better reception, but a lot of fans got pissed off because they went in expecting Luke and Obi-Wan to go on an adventure, and they did the switcheroo and ended up being little Leia, which I personally enjoyed, and I enjoyed that twist, but a lot of fans did not like that marketing tactic. And I think the other shows, Mandalorian kind of lost it in season 3, kind of lost the feel of the show. Ahsoka was great up until the last episode. You talked about that earlier, and I agree with you. I liked it on the first glance, and then when I watched it again, it was like, this episode makes no sense. Like, why are they sending an army out after these people? Just leave. They can't follow you. Just go. And
it's funny, you know, I don't think on either camp, whether it's the MCU or Star Wars, I don't think we would have a problem, even if the effects or the visuals look cheap. But if the stories were captivating, if the writing, if the dialogue was better, if the planning out of the character motivations was a little more thought out, I think we would be okay with all of that. And I know some people that are listening right now are saying, I am okay with it. It was fine. But they're, you know, stepping outside from the content creator aspect of things, there is a problem with both franchises. One may be more problematic than the other, and that just depends on what aisle you're standing on, what side of the aisle you're standing on. But you know, I think the backbone of any good show has got to be, first and foremost, it's got to be the script. It's got to be the writing.
And that's why I think Star Wars edges it out, because Favreau and Filoni do, even when they miss, and the big miss obviously for me was Boba Fett, but they still do world build, and they still do adhere to the character Bibles, except for Boba. Well, I don't even know if Boba Fett had a character Bible, because he had but 3 lines before he even got the show. So, and they adhere to it. The first thing I do if I went in, if I got a job, if I got Kevin Feige's job tomorrow, first thing I do is go in and be like, okay, we've had the rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four for 5 years. Why is Agatha all along getting a show, and we still haven't done anything with these properties? Who asked for that?
Yeah, well, hopefully they're deciding, well, you know, let's hire a good scriptwriter to at least, you know, get a good story going.
Yeah, but I mean, you've had, like, the minute Bob Iger bought Fox, he should have been like, someone get on X-Men.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's funny because, you know, I always talk about movies being either product or art. And obviously, you know, with these blockbuster films, they're definitely product. You know, any independent filmmaker would love to make $2 billion on the first rung, the way Force Awakens did. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's interesting. I think you know, and then you know the MCU recently announced that they're going back to having a showrunner and a production Bible that kind of tells everything that needs to be told as far as the show goes. So I think in that respects they are heading in the right direction. I'm hoping that Star Wars kind of follows suit when it comes to the characters in the lore and really, and again, not that I want Star Wars to give fans what they want, because sometimes, fans don't know what they want. But I think, George Lucas has already established this universe, and I think they have been handed the keys to Star Wars, and I'm really hoping that they would kind of just usher, I don't know, a new generation of awesomeness. It's fallen short for me, but hopefully soon.
I think, and we've had this conversation before. I think we had the conversation last time I came on with hey, easy boy. My dog acts up in the rain. It's raining over here. We had this conversation when one of my guys from GNN, David Furr, came on the Scuttlebutt podcast. Star Wars fans are constantly saying we want something different. We want something different. We want to get away from the Skywalker saga. We want to get away from this. We want to get off of Tatooine. And then, Lucasfilm does that, and they deliver something like Andor, and then they hate it. So it's kind of, and they complain. And who was it? Was it a Star Wars theory? It was like, there's no bricks in Star Wars, or there's no screws in Star Wars. It's like, so I mean, I understand the reluctance, because they tried whenever they try something new, there is such a massive backlash from a vocal minority, and it's a pain in the ass, and the vote and the people that like it, which I would like to say probably more people liked Andor than hated it. I thought it was a very well done show, so I would be willing to bank that. But the people that like it don't say anything, and the people that hate it are just loud, and then that's what the studio thinks the reception to the show is. So
yeah. Well, I convince everybody that asks me about Andor to go watch the damn show, because it's, again, quality Star Wars, in my opinion.
If you like good writing,
bricks and all.
If you like good writing, good character development, it's a little bit more dialogue driven than the other Star Wars shows, which I like. But yeah, I thought it was the best thing they put out in years. And even jumping to the big screen for now, Marvel, you said they're going back to their roots and they're going to follow the story Bibles and the character Bibles, but are they really? Because now I'm reading today, Fantastic Four movie, they're making the Silver Surfer a girl. So I'm wondering where they're going with that.
Yeah. And if I remember, there was a Silver Surfer that was female in the comic books, but I got to go back and refamiliarize myself with that. And I'm wondering if that's what they're talking about, or the Silver Surfer, the main Silver Surfer. I don't know. But obviously when these headlines get pumped out, it's that the folks that rely on the hate clicks and the rage clicks are the ones that jump on it first, because they got to get their crowd involved in order for them to make money. So
they want their article to pop up on certain YouTubers' videos, and they want these guys to rant about them, because that gets people to click on their article and that gets people to read it. So, and I think that's what a lot of these people write about. They don't necessarily write about what's going on, but they'll write something like that because they know. I don't want to name names, but the big guy with the beard that's always upset about things, you know who I'm talking about. He's gonna,
you know what? There's a lot of guys. There's a lot of big guys with beards.
He's gonna he's going to get on there and just be like, oh, my God, this is Marvel's Bud Light moment or something like that. And you know, hey, come on, buddy. Come on. He's going to be like, this is Marvel's Bud Light moment or something like that. And, you know, it's like, no, they're barely even, they just cast Mr. Fantastic. Like, let's hear it out.
Yeah.
You know, like they just released the news the other day on DC that the Engineer is going to be the villain for Superman Legacy. And then today we're reading it's going to be Lex Luthor. So we don't know anything until it's actually in production.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, well. But, yeah. Ambrose, any final thoughts on our little discussion here?
I would urge people, as I always do. I'm more of a cynical guy than Ro here, and I have my thoughts on things, and I write my reviews, and some of my reviews are good, some of them are bad. But in this world of the internet where everyone has an opinion, I don't think you can trust reviewers, even myself. I urge all of you, if you're interested in something, watch it for yourself, form your own opinion. Watch Star Wars. Watch She-Hulk. If you liked it, you know, I'm not going to say I don't respect you. No, I'm just kidding. If you liked it, that's your opinion, and just think for yourself, watch for yourself, and don't listen to all the vitriol and the spite that comes out of mainly YouTube and social media. Just, you know, if it entertains you and makes you happy, enjoy it.
Absolutely. Yeah, something about that big green She-Hulk rendering did something to me. I don't know. Ambrose is turning red. All right. Ambrose, thank you so much for joining me on this quick cut segment on today's episode. Where can people find you to say hello there?
Oh, you can find me anywhere every Saturday night at 10 p.m. I'm on the Geek News Gauntlet with William Morgan and Cat Holler and a cast of others. You can check out my writing at www.geeknewsnow.net. My most recent article is the trailer review for Ghostbusters. I also did a 2-part article about how Universal might possibly buy Warner Brothers. A lot of research in there, a lot of fun facts. So check that out. And yeah, that's pretty much where you can find me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me. And we got another segment of Quick Cuts with another friend right after this.
Hello. Hi, this is Sean from Extra Star Wars.
Oh.
And you're listening to the Scarif Scuttlebutt.
Hey, what's up, Chicago friends? If you are in the Andersonville area and want to check out a really cool comic book shop, head on over to Alley Cat Comics, 5304 North Clark Street in Chicago. If you're into comics, Magna, gaming, and all the cool stuff, Alley Cat Comics is the place to be. Gotta love Celine and the rest of the gang over at Alley Cat Comics. Pick up your gaming supplies, set aside your comic books, grab the latest Star Wars and Marvel books, or give them a call at 773-907-3404 and tell them the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast sent you.
Oh, yeah.
Alley Cat Comics in Chicago. It's where the cool cats hang. See what I did there? Okay, folks, we got one more segment here. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Quick Cuts on the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast. This is your friendly neighborhood Ro, talking to you from the Citadel, and our third friend, Stephen Kent, author extraordinaire, and we're going to be talking about promotions, but you kind of got a little bit of a promotion, a little level up in your writing game, isn't that right? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Ro. You can find me now over at Bounding into Comics as a contributor to the Star Wars section. I'm helping over there at Bounding in a little bit of sort of a rebuilding effort of taking Bounding in a new direction, and Star Wars will be a little bit under my guidance over there. I'm super excited to be diving into that project. In addition to also running geekystoics.com with my friend Riley Blanton, who many of your folks in the audience might remember Riley from the Star Wars Report, awesome Star Wars podcast from years gone past, and we're now teamed up on this new project, diving deeper into the philosophy behind Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and Marvel movies.
Excellent. Who knew that nerds were so deep in thought, in concept and theory and all that stuff? But that's one of the reasons I love science fiction, because we really get into, I think the outside world thinks of sci-fi as like a children's genre. But damn, when we get deep and into conversation, there's no stopping us.
No, that's absolutely right. I feel like some of the best conversations that I've had on the meaning of life and what it is we're all doing here on this rock are conversations I've had at Comic-Con and sometimes even with people half my age. So no, the nerds love to think deep, and it's these stories that we podcast about and do fan films about and go out to midnight screenings of, that inspire our minds, our hearts, and for some of us, our spirits to think a little bit bigger about the world.
Absolutely. As they say, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think science fiction and fantasy and all that nerd stuff really definitely, puts that into perspective. But Stephen, thank you very much for joining me on this segment of Quick Cuts. But our topic, talking about little promotions here, this week is, I guess, you being on here is a little metaphoric as far as promotions goes. We've got some news that dropped earlier in the week. And, we here at the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast, we usually don't do what's new in the world of news. But this one, I think we did kind of have to talk about, because it has to do obviously with Star Wars. But Dave Filoni gets bumped up to, what is the title? Because it's a little confusing, because didn't he have some sort of lateral move earlier in the year in April? But now he is the Chief Creative Officer, or what's that title again?
The Chief Creative Officer, the CCO. So in many ways, this is absolutely an executive position within Lucasfilm, focused on the early stages of project development. I am certainly not a Lucasfilm insider by any stretch of the imagination, but the way that these things generally work is you've got story group and you've got sort of the executive team who are doing the development and production of movies, but then you've got the very early planning stages of projects. That happens at a very high level, looking at budget, looking at strategy for the brand overall. Where does Star Wars need to go next from a business perspective? And then what kind of stories are available for being told. And in many ways, this is Dave Filoni kind of stepping up into that position. This is going to put him next to Kathleen Kenedy and Carrie Beck, who is in head of development. So again, this is just like the Jedi Council, in the words of Dave Filoni, for thinking about what Lucasfilm and Star Wars is doing at any given time. It's a big sea change for Dave Filoni, because instead of him being handed projects and direction from on high, he's going to have a role in charting the course of what kind of things they're focusing on in future projects.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I think it's something that I think a lot of Dave Filoni fans have been, kind of wishing that he would take on. I know a lot of people probably wanted him in charge of Lucasfilm rather than Kathleen Kenedy to begin with, but that's another podcast. But I think what are your initial thoughts when you heard that news? And I know, again, there's a lot of people that are just kind of wondering if this is the first step into a larger world, if you will. But once Kathleen Kenedy finally gets fired, or at least that's what the YouTubers are saying. I mean, she's going to retire at some point, and then all the YouTubers will be right that she got fired, right? That's what we're thinking. But
yeah. I certainly try never to. I try never to get into the phony speculation about who's on the chopping block and getting fired.
And I was just like tongue in cheek, of course, but this.
No, I understand, and I think what I've been reading a lot lately is that Bob Iger, the very top rungs of Disney, is having the most miserable comeback of his life. This coming back to Disney as sort of a savior last year after he had entered retirement and left. I think it was in 2019 when he stepped away and, sailed off into the sunset as like a hero of Disney who expanded all of their properties, expanded their potential, and doubled their stock prices, coming back to it now cut in half. And he can't seem to get a hold of it at all. Kathleen Kenedy doesn't operate in a vacuum. She operates in that situation of Disney as a larger entity suffering incredibly. And Star Wars is in this moment where, like, if you're just sort of like a live and let live fan, this is sort of a golden era of content, stories. But I don't think that the fan base, the loyal fan base, has ever been more unhappy. And Kathleen Kenedy is probably at some point going to bear the brunt of that. I don't know if this is like putting Dave Filoni in a position to learn executive management where then he can one day take the reins of a place like Lucasfilm. But I do happen to believe that you have to have some kind of prior experience at the executive level of a movie studio to possibly ever have a chance to run it. So I kind of hope that this is Dave Filoni learning the ropes of those types of projects.
Sure.
But I do have a concern, Ro.
Let's hear it.
So I told this story in Bounding Into Comics. If you go over to Bounding Into Comics, you can find it still on the front page. Just sort of a deeper dive into this promotion for Dave Filoni, and that it reminds me of something from within Star Wars lore. Again, I don't love like entertainment film studio speculation because it's all just so, I don't know, in a way contrived. So I always look to Star Wars as a source of guidance for how to think about these things. And I'm recalling Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn, before episode 1, before we see him die in The Phantom Menace, he was having a really hard time training Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he's offered a chance by the Council to join the Jedi Council and to be one of the core members who run the Jedi Order. And Qui-Gon Jinn doesn't know what to do. He kind of wants that opportunity because it's a huge honor and you get to chart the future of the Jedi and their role in the galaxy. But he's also on a spiritual journey himself in this book, Master and Apprentice, written by Claudia Gray. And he wants to continue to study the Force, to learn about its secrets, to study things that the Jedi Council doesn't want him to study. And so he goes, well, then I can't be on the council.
Sure.
And Dave Filoni mentioned that this job was like him joining the Jedi Council. And I immediately went,
oh my God!
But you're kind of too good for this.
Yeah.
Ahsoka to me was the peak of Dave Filoni being an imaginative Star Wars creator. And I want to see more of that. I want to see more magic in Star Wars. And I just worry about Dave Filoni's capability to do that, hobnobbing with executives and duking it out with Kathleen Kenedy over whether or not the Force is female or if we need more magic and more Night Sisters and all that kind of stuff. I just worry about that. I think it's a role that possibly kills your spirit. So I'm skeptical. In the end, Qui-Gon Jinn does decline the opportunity to join the council because he wants to continue to study the Force freely. And so thinking about Dave Filoni in that same sense, may the Force be with him. I wish him the best of luck as he's doing this job. And I still hope that we get the Dave Filoni directed movies. But I don't know if you can direct these movies while you're also doing the role of chief creative officer.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I wonder if he sensed the irony when he said, he equated himself to Qui-Gon Jinn joining the Jedi Council. Only time will tell, my friend. Only time will tell. And, I think Lucasfilm has been on the ropes for announcing things way too soon and then canceling them. I think, a large percentage of the things that they announced, back in 2019, 2020, a lot of stuff has either, been forgotten, put on the back shelf, outright canceled. So I wonder, like you said, I mean, can you be an executive and still direct a movie? I mean, I guess you can, but the workload I feel might be a little too jarring for someone like Dave Filoni, especially because, like you said, he really doesn't have the managerial experience to be able to juggle both things at the same time.
No, I suppose technically not, but I think all resumes start that way, and
Sure.
Dave Filoni is. I'm not like a Dave Filoni fan. I'm a Star Wars fan, and so when I see Star Wars stuff that I like and Dave Filoni is responsible for it, I'm like, hooray! Like more
Sure.
of that, please.
Yeah.
And I think he'll do a fine job in this role, and there's really no reason to be particularly cynical about it. But I do feel that the winds of change are clearly blowing at Disney and at Lucasfilm. There's a lot of ruminations about the financial pain that company is going through. And in some ways, the fans who are disenchanted with the way that their most favorite stories and franchises and legacy properties have been treated, they're to credit for that. If you just keep gobbling up garbage, they'll keep producing garbage.
Sure.
And treating these stories in a shoddy manner. So in some way, the people who have inflicted the pain on Disney for the past couple of years, keep it up, I guess, because, they are actually looking at the tea leaves now and going, I think we've made some mistakes. The question is whether or not the ship can be righted.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, early on, even I think right after The Last Jedi, and when that that crowd started their upheaval, it didn't seem like I think with folks that did not like that film, and I'm including myself, they I guess the more prudent fans that did not like that film were asking for some sort of change. I don't know. And again, from a corporate standpoint, I'm not sure if a corporation, listens to the angry branch of fandom. It might have taken so many years, from then to now to kind of step back and say, well, I can understand that the angry YouTubers are saying this, but there are some other regular people that are also saying this. So we might have, a point.
I don't think that they listen to angry YouTubers
Right.
and clout chasers online. But the way that this works is the trickle down effect, where when you do have at the very top levels, articulate, angry people who really don't like what is being served up by Lucasfilm, by Disney, that does find its way out into the masses. I work in conservative media for a day job, and I'm always blown away at how everyday people that I talk to in these circles, they do say the same things that I'm hearing on online conservative media when they're talking about movies and they're talking about Star Wars and entertainment. And those people are parroting the same things that are coming from your angry YouTuber crowd. So there absolutely is a dissemination effect. And I think what studio executives, Disney, Lucasfilm, what they pay attention to and experience is box office numbers,
Sure.
low streaming numbers, and poor user responses on review pages and review sites. That is what they see, and that is a trickle-down effect of influential people online. That's kind of my read of it. I think it would be kind of pitiful if Lucasfilm executives were watching their YouTube reviews, but they feel the effects.
Sure. And, I mean, it's a weird time to live in, too. I mean, movie theaters have been suffering for the longest time since the start of the pandemic. And there doesn't seem to be a reprieve for movies out in the theater. I think, streaming has somewhat killed movie theater business. But again, we can get into that and talk about that at another point. Oh, you disagree? You think you think Because again, like for me, I am a proponent. If a new movie comes out, I'd rather watch it in the theater than sit at home. I don't care how good your home theater is. I'd rather go watch it out with other people and just feed off of their energy. I went to go see The Creator, was the last movie that I went to go see. It was a great experience in IMAX, bigger, screen bigger than life. The emotion of the people around me, and you don't get that at home.
Nope, the movie theaters are not dying. They're not dying.
They better not be. I hope so.
They're evolving. I mean, just as recently as this past week, the 2023 box office altogether is somewhere around 960 million for the year. That is up 50% from 2022.
Good to hear.
And it is up 25% from where it was in 2019. Obviously, we're talking about like pandemic and then pre-pandemic,
Sure.
but things are going steady, and then you have to just consider the kinds of movies that hit the screens. I mean, Taylor Swift's Eras tour was huge, and it was a new kind of entertainment experience. Obviously, there have been concerts that then play in movie theaters before. It's not like it's never been done before, but the more that experiments like that are done in media, you're going to get huge cash flow going into movie theaters. And what that does is it sustains them to then be able to support more movies, more art films, more indie flicks. It's kind of a subsidization model where you might have to have movie theaters indulging a lot of stuff that you wouldn't consider to be cinema, so that you can then have your cinema.
Sure.
That's kind of like how Netflix has survived for so long in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you say to the folks that you see a lot of these hashtags, in Filoni we trust and thank God for Filoni, and you got the meme where they're praying to the Filoni effigy in the sky.
I'm not sure what's worse, that or the Fauci candles, the Fauci prayer candles.
Right.
I'm guilty of like sharing a "In Filoni We Trust" meme once or twice because they're just so funny, and I find fan culture to be amusing. But I do kind of roll my eyes at all of that stuff. There's just this very natural human inclination to always have these heroes, and then these demons and dragons and dragon slayers, and Kathleen Kenedy is the dragon that needs slaying, and you've got this like guy riding in out of the sunset, Dave Filoni in his big cowboy hat who's saving the day. It's just silly to me because these are not gods, these are not heroes, these are people, and they're going to win some, they're going to lose some. I just have trouble buying into it. Even George Lucas, God, like if you look at his batting average for movies, I mean, the guy, visionary, a genius. He's given us so much joy in all of our lives. You and I are both surrounded by George Lucas's works right now. But also, again, the batting average of that man with quality and quantity. He made a lot of crap stuff. Have you ever seen his involvement in that movie Labyrinth? I mean, my God. And then
Labyrinth is a cult classic now, but I see what you mean. I mean, executive.
Well, so's The Room.
Howard the Duck.
No, I hear you, but like these were not successes in the traditional sense, and they actually do kind of stink. Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, what a mess. I've always considered it to be the bottom of the barrel up until The Rise of Skywalker comes out. So I just don't believe in treating any Star Wars creator or executive as some kind of god or devil. They're just people, and I just watch what I enjoy, and then I don't watch what I don't.
Yeah, it's we had this debate many episodes ago. We talked about how movies are either art or product, and I think with blockbusters, they're more product than art. They can get a little artsy at times, but they're really designed to sell a ticket, to put a person in the seat, and make money. I would be okay with the In Filoni We Trust if it weren't for especially that last episode of Ahsoka. That was very underwhelming for me. I mean, the entire series, for me, was a little underwhelming. But again, if you wanted to hear my actual review on that, Brad and I did that a couple of weekends ago. But I mean, for the most part, I think, as we wrap things up here, I think I am cautiously optimistic. I think obviously Dave Filoni having the background with George Lucas is giving me a little bit of hope. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I do agree with that.
I
agree with that. There's something to the fact that Dave Filoni came over to Lucasfilm from working on Avatar, that he was noticed by George Lucas, that he worked so closely with him on the Clone Wars, that he spent so much time with him. If there is somebody in Hollywood who is, of protege level,
right,
apprentice, Padawan level to George Lucas, it's Dave Filoni. Like there's nobody else.
Yeah.
And if we are at our core human beings, we kind of have these like monarchical tendencies and think about things in terms of heirs and who gets passed down what, right? In many ways, like I do think George or Dave Filoni is kind of that heir to what George Lucas has built. And that's going to require him to not just honor where Star Wars has been. It's going to require him to tread new territory, break new ground. And boy, did he in Peridia, a brand new galaxy, which gave us sort of the idea of a galaxy far, far away, long time ago. So cool. And I just like how Dave Filoni is thinking a little bit bigger about the Force and about the Star Wars universe that we've been given, while also being in so many ways honorable to Star Wars history and where we have come from. He has had moments of flippant disrespect towards the fans and towards some of the fandom culture. I pop off and spout off a lot of things too sometimes. But I look at the whole body of work and I go, I mean, this is it. Like, I'm happy with this. My kid is happy with this most of all. My daughter just loves almost anything that Dave Filoni has touched. And she doesn't watch behind the scenes stuff or debate Star Wars production on Twitter. She is obsessed with Clone Wars, Rebels, and Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
And that's completely by coincidence. She doesn't care about the credits. She's drawn towards certain kinds of stories, and they're the ones that have Dave Filoni's fingerprints on them.
Sure.
And so for me, I go, he has a sense of magic that kids appreciate and that certain curmudgeonly adults might not. And you know what? That's life.
Yeah, sure. I always say that you should watch these nerd movies with children, because I think your cynicism would go right out the window as you see them enjoying whatever it is that you're watching. It's absolutely true. Dave Filoni, yes, an exceptional example of an heir to the empire. See what I did there? But absolutely. Final thoughts. Dave Filoni gets promoted to the big kahuna. What do you think?
I'm optimistic.
Sure.
I'm optimistic about what he can do. I do, again, just caution and hope that Dave Filoni knows Star Wars lore and Star Wars stories, knows that this kind of opportunity was offered to the great Qui-Gon Jinn, and he saw it as too much of a risk for his ability to explore the big ideas about the Force. And Dave Filoni, I hope you're listening. Same situation here for you, my man. So try to stay in touch with where you came from, and don't let hanging out with the executives and Kathleen Kenedy warp your sense of appreciation for the Force.
Absolutely. Well said, my friend. Stephen, tell the folks that are listening where people can find you to say hello there.
Yeah, come on over to geekystoics.com. That's geekystoics.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Stephen Kent X, putting out bad Star Wars takes, talking about politics, and nerding out on philosophy from time to time.
Excellent, Stephen. Always a pleasure having you on the Scarif Scuttlebutt Podcast, going deep on Star Wars lore, my friend. Until next time, I hope you come back soon.
Thanks, Ro.
Greetings, listener. Just a reminder that the podcast you just heard is a proud member of the Red 5 Network family. Red5Network.com offers you a great variety of shows you'll be sure to love. So the next time you're itching for quality content, make sure you head over to red5network.com. You'll find this podcast along with a whole lot more. All wings report in. It's the Red 5 Network.